Welcome to Talk Travel with Heather Tate, North Mississippi's podcast for savvy travelers. Talk Travel with Heather Tate is a weekly podcast that airs every Monday on the Shark 102.3 FM radio station based in Ripley, Mississippi, and is then released as a podcast. Travel advisor and travel enthusiast Heather Tate of Whimsical Destinations gives listeners expert travel tips curated through the years of personal and professional experience. By clicking subscribe, you'll have a new travel tip to add to your collection delivered to your podcast library every Monday. Talk Travel with Heather Tate is brought to you by Sun Bear Studio. Sun Bear Studio is a boutique recording studio in the heart of Ripley, Mississippi. When you record with us at Sun Bear Studio, we can mix, master, register, and publish your music, your podcast, or your family story. Email us when you're ready at sunbear@jc.media.
Good morning, Northeast Mississippi travelers. This is Heather with Talk Travel with Heather Tate, and I'm so excited to share my adventures and tried and true tips with you. Whether you are also a seasoned traveler, a hopeful traveler, or currently an armchair traveler, meaning you're going to follow along with us from home for now. This is our 130th episode of Talk Travel with Heather Tate, and this week we're going to talk all about winter weekends. January and February are my clients' slowest travel months. And so for you, they may also be months that you don't typically think about getting out and exploring. There seems to be a lull between Christmas vacation and spring break for most Mississippi travelers. Now, this isn't true for the rest of the world. A lot of places, especially if they have really cold winters, like in the Northeast, Canada, they're going to use these 2 months to visit the Caribbean for sure. We have milder winters for the most part, and so that is one reason why we don't travel as often these 2 months. So this is a time, though, that a lot of people are booking for later in the year adventures while staying close to home. However, I have personally found that weekend getaways are a great way to start off the new year. I love to start off the new year with a getaway. My husband Logan and I have started a tradition, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, where we go to Jamaica in January. We didn't even mean for this to become a tradition. We just had our 5th annual Jamaica in January adventure. We went for a long weekend. So you're thinking like, oh, you're talking about winter weekends. This is going to have to be something really close to home. You can go to Jamaica in a 3-night weekend trip. I've done it multiple times, and it is something that I look forward to. It helps me jumpstart my new year with adventures and gives me some sun. Some sun and some sand, some peace and time to plan and reflect for the new year, just to start it off right. I love to go to Jamaica in January. And so if you're a part of our Facebook group, Heather and Logan Tate Whimsical Destinations, you probably even saw some of our pictures from our Jamaica trip. And if you are a lady and you're listening and you're like, oh, I would love to go to Jamaica, but my husband will not go with me, or I do not have a significant other who would want to go with me, but I have friends and they also want to go, then you should take part in our girls trip. We are going to Jamaica again in July, but it's going to be all the ladies. We're going to celebrate my mother's 80th birthday in Jamaica. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, contact me. Okay, so what about if you want a winter weekend that's going to be cold and going to be local? So while I'm an advocate for visiting the Caribbean in the winter months for the best weather, I have some great ideas for some picturesque winter weekends nearby. And I'm going to share these with you. Now, some of these I'm just going to touch on very quickly because I have full episodes about. And so if you're interested and you would like to be able to find the full episode and you can't find it just by going to our show history, then reach out to me. You can message me on Facebook. My cell is 662-401-9327. My email is heather@whimsicaldestinations, that's with an S.com, and I will point you in the right direction. So that way you can have the full episode. Okay, so here's just some in no particular order. I'm just going to go ahead and start listing them for you because we have a lot. Branson, Missouri. Now, this is not peak travel time for Branson. This is going to be when most of the shows are closed for the season. You're going to Silver Dollar City is closed for the season. So you're like, well, why would I go to Branson in January and February then? Because it is slow season. It is when prices are going to be at their absolute lowest. So if you're wanting a winter weekend away where you're going to go and you're going to eat some good food, you're going to get some time away, you're going to have zero crowds, all right, that's a plus, right? You're going to get to spend some time in nature. You can go to the Big Cedar Resort where there's a beautiful spa. There's lots of activities that you can do both indoor and outdoor. There's a golf cart trail that's open year-round, and it is by far one of my most favorite things to do, where you can rent a golf cart and go over waterfalls, through covered bridges, inside a cave that has a bat bar. I've done it as a girls' trip, and I believe it was in February the year we went. So there's still a lot to do in Branson. If you're thinking off the beaten path, we're not going to be going for the shows, and we're not going to be going for, Silver Dollar City. Same with Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge. Oh my goodness. What an amazing time to go to the mountains in general. So we can start with weekends in winter in the mountains are one of my favorite times. You go to Gatlinburg in January, once you hit past that first week, right? So right now and on, up until spring break, there feels like there's no one there. You can get an amazing cabin for a fraction of the price. You can walk downtown without being shoulder to shoulder. Most of the big attractions in Gatlinburg are still open. Some of the shows close. Dollywood closes. They have an off season, but if you want to go, the aquarium's open. Some of the shows are still going to be open. Not all, but some. And there's so many different attractions outdoors. Now, are there some loops that are going to be closed? Yes. Do you need to be winter aware? Yes. But if you're wanting to go and enjoy the mountains, still go to a lot of the restaurants that are going to be open without the crowds, enjoy a hot tub or a cup of coffee on your deck, then this is the time to think about going. All right, what are some other options? Nashville, great time to go. Getting a tree house or a cabin or a cottage. Tishomingo has a beautiful little tree house that I have talked about a lot. It's a perfect time to go. When we went off season, and it was beautiful. If you're wanting to go and we just want to bring a book, we want to enjoy the soaking tub, we want to take in the views, we just want to rest and relax, this is a great time to go. Some of your places that book up for 90% of the year, you're going to find last minute availability right now for January and February, a fraction of the price. We just went to Coleman, Alabama for a little Christmas in Coleman getaway, and we stayed in this beautiful cottage right on a little babbling brook, and it could sleep 4 people or it could be a weekend away for 2. And they also have a treehouse right down the road, and I'm telling you, I'm going to check out that treehouse next. It is Aladdin themed, so like the Persian, and like if you like the Agrabah, like that kind of look, we're talking 2.5 hours away. You can experience a treehouse like that. And there are so many others in Alabama, Georgia, the mountains in Georgia. You don't need to sleep on those. You've got Helen, Georgia, Blue Ridge, Dahlonega. All of these are going to have some year-round activities, but they're going to have beautiful places to stay. If you like themed cottages, tree houses, that kind of like a rustic getaway, Harry Potter themed, there's a Hagrid's Hut in Georgia that stays booked up almost year-round. There's also a Mad Hatter's Cottage in Georgia, a little cabin that's on my list. These type of places that would normally be booked up, that are already booking up for the summer and the fall now, if they're not already, are going to have some last-minute availability. Now, there's some things you want to keep in mind. I mentioned a lot of these. Oh, I didn't even touch on Smith Lake has new tree houses. Lake Gunnersville State Park, new cottages, all with like beautiful forest views and hot tubs outside on their balcony. So Arkansas, Hot Springs, Eureka Springs. We stayed in an amazing planetarium treehouse overlooking a river that had beautiful stargazing from a telescope. So when I say that this is a great time to be thinking about those off the beaten path locations that are really hard to get in the summer, look into those for now, for a winter weekend. Okay, but here's what I want you to keep in mind. There could be some weather restrictions. So if you're booking last minute, That's usually better because okay, we're not about to go into a winter blizzard, because our weather can be unpredictable. Same for Arkansas, same for Tennessee, North Alabama, North Georgia. We can have the once a year snowstorm on a weekend. One time we were planning to go to Branson, and it was going to be in February. I was super excited about it. Or I think it was the last week in January. They got 10 inches of snow right before we went. I was still pulling to go. Logan has snow chains. He's one of the only Mississippians probably to have snow chains. But after being stuck for a week and having to spend the night at work, he's like, I will have snow chains for the rest of my life, even being in Mississippi. I told him, I was like, we've got snow chains. And he informed me that snow chains are for emergency, not so you can still go on your weekend vacation. Okay, Logan, that's what he thinks. So we didn't go to Branson. Instead, the next week we ended up going to Gatlinburg, where there was like a dusting of snow, but not 10 inches. So keep in mind, be watchful of the weather. You always want to have a cancellation policy available. So be careful of booking non-refundable any time of year, but especially in the winter, because we could have weather where our pipes or roads are freezing. Where you're going could have winter weather. If you're going to Gatlinburg, Asheville, North Carolina, other places in the North Carolina, need to be aware of what the weather situation is. I've been in Branson before when it was 70 degrees in January, and I've been when it was like in the teens. So, there can be a range. So keep in mind, be mindful of weather restrictions, mindful of closures. We talked about that. If you're going off season, there's perks, meaning the price, and low crowds. If you traveled between Christmas and New Year's, which I am not a fan of traveling that week for many reasons. And if you've listened to our podcast for any length of time, you know why. But I'm a big fan of traveling in January and February. But I also want you to be aware that there are going to be some things that are closed. So if you're going to see that specific show, you want to make sure that they are not taking a couple months off. And so research that before you go. So being aware of the weather, making sure that you have winter gear, that your car is going to be able to, if you're going to a little cabin in Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, I see it all the time, read the details of what's required. If it says requires 4-wheel drive, then that means it's going to be difficult to get to. If you're thinking, well, I don't want to be perched so high on the mountain, then think about other options in Alabama and Georgia that might be easier to get to. But see if there's any restrictions for the vehicle to get there. Also, sometimes throughout the year, they may have a hot tub, but they may not run it in the winter. Or if it has a pool with a hot tub jacuzzi option, it may be closed certain times of the year. And if that's one of your incentives for going, you want to check that. So look to see what's closed. Make sure that your car has, winter safety equipment in it. Always have blankets and bottled water. Always keep your phone charged. Have an extra charger, of something that can charge a phone if you find yourself stranded. Keep your car filled with gas. Don't ride on E like I do most of the year. I'm saying do as I say, not as I do. Keep your car full and keep aware of the weather. Don't put your head in the sand. Right? Like, even though this is in the winter, be aware of okay, what does the weather look like, this weekend when I'm going to be traveling? And if you do all those things and keep these suggestions in mind, you're going to have the opportunity to have a fabulous winter weekend. If you need more advice, tips, and ideas, join us on our Facebook group, Heather and Logan Tate Whimsical Destinations. Wherever you go and whatever you do this week, I hope you have a wonderful winter weekend. That's all the time we have for this week. Happy traveling. Take the trip, make those memories. Life is short. You won't regret it.
This show is made possible by JC Media, LLC in Ripley, Mississippi. JC Media owns the Shark 102.3 Classic Rock FM radio station where the show is hosted, and Sun Bear Recording Studio where the interviews are recorded. We need your feedback and support. If you listen to the podcast on a player like iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Amazon Music, please subscribe to the show and leave us a review. We also have an email in which you can share your feedback. That email is theshark1023@gmail.com. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite app or stream episodes online at shark1023.com/podcasts. Today's episode was produced by Melinda Marsalis. It was edited by Rick Williams and engineered by Chris Marsalis. The podcast technician is Joyce Grady.